helicopter banked left as we approached Site Chimera. I studied the case files on my tablet, scrolling through sanitized summaries that told me very little. One missing researcher, one containment breach, one very expensive cleanup operation that required an outside investigator. Dr. Thorne, this is Dr. Khatri, site director. The voice crackled through my headset, clinical and professional. I'm currently off-site coordinating with headquarters, but I'll be managing your investigation remotely. Understood. Give me the situation. Dr. Evan Cole, senior researcher, missed his scheduled check-in 72 hours ago. We initiated containment protocols immediately and evacuated non-essential personnel. Cole was working on experimental neural compounds, highly classified material that poses significant risks if mishandled. I made notes on my tablet. Any indication this was deliberate? Unknown. Cole's psychological evaluations were within normal parameters, but the compounds he was developing can affect cognitive function. We need to determine if this was theft, defection, or something else entirely. Circling below us, the facility looked abandoned, a cluster of concrete buildings surrounded by double fencing, with only automated security cameras showing signs of activity. What's my primary objective? Locate Dr. Cole and assess the status of his research. Our remaining technician will provide facility access and basic support, but you're operating essentially solo. The fewer people exposed to potential contamination, the better. The helicopter touched down beside the main building. I ducked under the rotor wash and grabbed my case. Site Chimera was abandoned. No personnel, no vehicles except a single maintenance truck, just the mechanical hum of distant systems. The windows reflected the overcast sky like dead eyes. As the helicopter lifted off, the absolute stillness hit me. Research facilities were never this quiet. A man emerged from the main entrance as I approached. Maintenance coveralls, late 30s, with the kind of exhaustion that comes from too much coffee and not enough sleep. He moved carefully, like someone who had been alone for too long. Dr. Thorne? Ben Reeves, facility technician. His handshake was firm, but his eyes kept darting back toward the building. Thank God you're here. It's been 3 days since the evacuation. Just me and the automated systems. Rough assignment. You have no idea. This place gets weird when it's empty. Sounds you can't identify. Equipment turning itself on. He caught himself and managed a tired smile. Sorry. Cabin fever. Let's get you processed. Ben led me through the main entrance to an airlock chamber lined with warning signs in multiple languages. The decontamination system activated automatically. Ultraviolet lights, chemical mist that made my ears pop. Protocol requires full protective gear for anyone entering post-breach, Ben explained, pulling a yellow hazmat suit from a storage locker. The compounds Dr. Cole was working with can be absorbed through skin contact. I suited up methodically, checking seals and testing the breathing apparatus. The suit felt heavy, claustrophobic. Through the faceplate, everything looked slightly distorted. One more thing, Ben said, producing a medical injector. Prophylactic medication, neural stabilizer. Prevents any residual contamination from taking hold if your suit gets compromised. The injection stung, and within seconds I felt a strange metallic taste on my tongue. Side effects? Mild disorientation, possible input lag. Nothing serious, but it might affect your reaction time for a few hours. Ben guided me through corridors with an echo that suggested the building was mostly empty. Emergency lighting cast red shadows that made everything look like a medical emergency. Dr. Cole's lab is this way, Ben said, his voice muffled by the suit's communication system. We haven't touched anything since he disappeared. We passed several observation windows looking into what Ben called patient rooms, though he was vague about what kind of patients they housed. I slowed without meaning to, expecting something, Movement, a face, signs of occupancy. Nothing. The space was empty. Had been empty. But I realized I'd been bracing for impact, waiting for something to appear against the glass. Quiet wing, I noted. Ben barely glanced at the windows. Most patients were transferred before the evacuation. Most? The ones who could be safely moved. He kept walking, not elaborating on who couldn't be moved or where they were now. We reached a communications station where Ben helped me establish contact with Dr. Khatri. The connection was clear, reassuring after the strangeness of the corridors. Dr. Thorne, status report. Khatri's voice came through crisp and authoritative. Facility secured, decontamination complete, beginning preliminary investigation. I'm suited up and injected with the prophylactic. What's the timeline on this? 48 hours maximum before we escalate to a full hazmat team. The longer Dr. Cole remains missing, the greater the risk of wider contamination. Your job is to determine if this situation is containable or if we need to implement more drastic measures. Understood. As the communication ended, I looked around the facility with new eyes. The protective gear made everything feel distant, unreal. The medication was making my thoughts slightly sluggish. And somewhere in this maze of corridors and laboratories, a missing researcher was either hiding or already dead. Ben waited for orders. In the distance, I could hear the building's ventilation cycling, the air pressure shifting subtly. Let's start with Dr. Cole's personal quarters, I said. I want to understand who we're looking for before we figure out where he went. The mission had begun. Ben led me through corridors that felt too wide for the number of people who should have been working here. We passed administrative offices with lights still on, computers displaying screensavers that cycled through company logos and safety reminders. Staff cafeteria first. Ben gestured down the corridor. Might give you a sense of the facility's normal operations. Larger than I expected, the cafeteria seated perhaps 60 people. Tables and chairs in neat rows, serving stations closed but clean. But what caught my attention were the photographs lining the walls. Staff photos from various facility events and achievements. I moved along the wall, studying the faces. Research teams celebrating project completions, holiday parties, safety award ceremonies. The faces looked normal enough. Scientists, technicians, administrative staff. But something about the compositions felt staged, like everyone was trying too hard to look natural. Dr. Cole? I asked, pointing to one of the photos. There were other faces in that photo. A woman with dark hair and an easy smile, mid-laugh, like someone had just told a joke. A man with his arm around a colleague, relaxed, comfortable. Another man in the background, slightly out of focus, but you could see he was holding a coffee cup in both hands. Their body language triggered recognition I couldn't articulate. The way the woman tilted her head, the way the man gripped his coffee cup like it was keeping him warm. I'd seen these exact postures before. My eyes searched for their faces in other photos on the wall, found them in 3 more, always around Cole, always in the background when he was at the edges. Ben moved closer, then pointed to a figure standing slightly apart from the main group. Dr. Evan Cole, recognizable from his personnel file, but looking uncomfortable. In every photo I found him, he was positioned at the edge of groups, never quite integrated with his colleagues. He wasn't particularly social. Ben's hand tightened on his tablet, focused on his work. Ben's eyes kept darting to certain spots in the photos, areas he seemed reluctant to look at directly. When I followed his gaze to one particular holiday photo, I saw Cole standing next to the punch bowl, looking directly at the camera with an expression that seemed almost pleading. When was this taken? December, I think. Christmas party. But Ben had moved away from the photo before I could examine it more closely. As we left the cafeteria, the medication's effects intensified. The input lag was becoming more pronounced. Ben would speak, and it would take me several seconds to process his words. Worse, I was experiencing what felt like proprioceptive disturbance. My sense of where my body was in space felt wrong, like I was wearing someone else's limbs. I reached for a handrail and missed it entirely, my depth perception compromised. "Dr. Thorne, you all right?" "Fine. Just adjusting to the suit." But it wasn't just the suit. When I tried to remember how I normally moved through spaces like this, the memories were vague. Had I always been this clumsy? Had I always needed to concentrate this hard on basic motor functions? "The injection site's a bit sore," I said, touching my arm where Ben had administered the prophylactic. "Normal reaction. Should fade in a few hours." Cole's quarters were modest but meticulously organized. Single bed, small desk, bookshelf with technical journals and a few personal items. Everything arranged with military precision. "Has anyone been through here since his disappearance?" "Visual sweep only. We didn't want to disturb potential evidence." Cole's journal lay in the desk drawer, a simple composition notebook filled with neat handwriting. The entries were dated, starting several months back. February 3rd. Review board meeting tomorrow for the new protocols. Still not entirely comfortable with the applications, but Khatri says the oversight committee has approved everything. Need to trust the process. February 15th. Mom called about my birthday next month. Told her I'd try to get leave, but the project timeline is demanding. She sounded disappointed. Always feel guilty about missing family events for work. March 8th. Bad dream last night. The lab. Everyone seizing at once while I watched from behind the observation glass. Woke up in a cold sweat. Too much coffee, probably. The handwriting on that entry looked different, shakier. The letters pressed harder into the page like Cole had been gripping the pen too tight. The words, "everyone seizing," held me longer than necessary. The medication was making me suggestible. "Dr. Thorne?" Ben's voice pulled me back. "Just reading." I turned the page, but the image lingered. Everyone seizing. Everyone. How many people was everyone? March 22nd. Khatri suggested I talk to someone about the stress. Says it's normal for researchers working on sensitive projects. Ben's been helpful, good listener, practical advice. April 1st. Couldn't sleep. Walked the facility at 3 a.m. Security was understanding, said it happens to a lot of researchers here. Place feels different at night, empty, larger somehow. April 19th. Review board approved the expanded protocols. Part of me is excited about the applications. Part of me is terrified. What we're developing could change everything about how we understand human consciousness. The final entry was mundane. Couldn't sleep. Going to the lab early to review yesterday's data. Mom's birthday next week. Need to remember to call. Nothing here suggests he was planning to leave, I told Ben. No, just a man dealing with work stress. But even as I said it, the journal entries bothered me. The handwriting was consistent, but the voice seemed to change subtly over time, becoming more formal, more distant. Searching more thoroughly, I found a research paper tucked between textbooks. The Throne Protocol, Immersive Narrative Therapy for Identity, Reconstruction in High-Stress Personnel. The abstract described a revolutionary approach to treating psychological trauma through controlled identity reconstruction. Subjects would be placed in therapeutic scenarios where they could safely explore different aspects of their personality while maintaining core stability. In the margins, someone had written notes in Cole's handwriting. Application broader than stated, and patient consent protocols unclear. Ben, look at this. Cole was researching therapeutic protocols. Ben shifted his weight but didn't seem surprised. Part of his work involved psychological applications, mental health support for facility personnel. but the margin notes suggested Cole had concerns about the research that went beyond normal scientific skepticism. My radio crackled to life. "Dr. Thorne, this is Dr. Cautry, scheduled check-in. Investigation proceeding. I've found Cole's personal effects and some research materials. No obvious indication of his current location. Any evidence of psychological deterioration prior to disappearance?" The journal demanded closer study, along with the therapy paper and its margin notes. "Some stress-related symptoms, insomnia, work anxiety, nothing that would indicate immediate risk. Continue your assessment. We need to locate those research materials." As the communication ended, I found myself listening for sounds from the other wings. Ben had mentioned patients who couldn't be evacuated. Where were they? The silence was total. No voices, no movement, no signs of life beyond our own footsteps. "It's very quiet," I said. Ben's voice tightened as he looked toward the corridor that led to other wings. "The remaining patients are stable, sedated, mostly." "How many?" "A few. The exact number varies depending on..." He trailed off. "We should focus on Cole." But the absence of sound bothered me more than noise would have. In psychiatric facilities, there was always something: talking, movement, staff activity. This felt like a morgue. Back in the central area, Ben pulled out a tablet to show me the facility's duty schedule. I was scanning through routine assignments when something caught my attention. "This shows you were on duty the night Cole disappeared. Emergency rotation. Someone had to maintain the facility after evacuation." But looking more closely at the schedule, I saw something troubling. Ben was listed as being on duty not just that night, but for the previous 3 days as well. And there were entries showing him covering Cole's normal responsibilities during that entire period. "Ben, this schedule shows you were already covering for Cole before he officially disappeared." Cole had been feeling unwell. I picked up some of his shifts, but you reported him missing only after he failed to show up for his evaluation. That's correct." Something in his tone suggested otherwise. The schedule implied Cole had been absent from normal duties for days before anyone reported him missing. Either Ben had been covering for him, or... Ben's face showed through his faceplate. Tired, yes. Stressed from 3 days alone in the facility. But there was more than that. A kind of sadness, like he was witnessing something inevitable play out. "Ben, how long have you really been alone here?" 3 days, since the evacuation. The medication was making it hard to process exactly what those inconsistencies meant. "Cole's laboratory is on the lower level," Ben said, leading me toward a bank of elevators. "Sublevel B, that's where his primary research was conducted." Elevator doors opened with a soft chime. We stepped inside, and Ben pressed the button for sublevel B. The car began its descent smoothly enough, but halfway down, something felt wrong. Not with the elevator, with me. The space seemed to compress and expand simultaneously, the walls too close, then too far. My sense of up and down inverted for a moment, leaving me gripping the handrail. "You all right?" Ben's voice came from very far away. I tried to answer, but the words wouldn't form. The elevator was still descending. I could feel the movement, but we seemed to have been traveling for too long. Far longer than necessary to reach sublevel B. When the doors finally opened, I had to check the panel twice to confirm we'd only descended 2 floors. "Medication side effects," Ben said quietly. "Happens sometimes." But he wouldn't meet my eyes. Cole's laboratory was a study in controlled chaos. The space was large, well equipped, but it looked like someone had been working frantically and then suddenly stopped. Equipment was left running, computer screens displaying half-finished calculations, notebooks scattered across workbenches. But it was the whiteboards that caught my attention, 3 large boards covered one wall, filled with Cole's handwriting. Chemical formulas, dosage calculations, behavioral matrices. Most of it was standard research notation, but there were repeated phrases scrawled in different areas: identity persistence under stress, baseline personality recovery, narrative coherence maintenance. I moved closer to examine the workbenches systematically. Cole had been working on multiple projects simultaneously: neural enhancement compounds, memory stabilization protocols, cognitive behavioral modification techniques. The research was sophisticated, cutting edge, but also deeply unsettling. On one workbench, I found detailed notes about Compound 57Z, the substance mentioned in my briefing. Cole's handwriting filled notebook after notebook with dosage calculations, behavioral observations, and what looked like ethical concerns. Subject: consent protocols unclear, long-term effects unknown, oversight committee unresponsive to safety queries. Dr. Thorne, we should move on. Ben shifted nervously behind me. Just give me a minute. I was documenting everything with my body camera, taking photos of the research notes. These notes felt crucial. And then, on the main whiteboard in the center, I saw something that made my blood freeze. In large letters, Thorne, with arrows pointing to throne. I stared at the anagram, trying to process what it meant. Why would Cole be researching my name? Why the arrows, the emphasis, the prominence on his main research board? Ben. My voice was barely a whisper. What is this? Ben moved closer to the whiteboard, his face obscured by the visor. Cole was researching anagram-based memory triggers, he said carefully. Part of his therapeutic protocols. But that didn't explain why my name was written there. Why there were arrows connecting it to throne. Why Cole had been thinking about me before his disappearance. I tried to radio Dr. Khatri for clarification, but got only static. No response. Ben, I need to understand what Cole was doing with my name. This isn't coincidence. Ben shifted uncomfortably. We should leave the lab. Please, it's not safe to stay here. Not safe how? I turned to face him. Ben, what aren't you telling me? His expression, even through the protective visor, showed a conflict I couldn't read. Fear, certainly, and something that looked almost like guilt. We need to go, he said quietly. There are things about this facility, about Cole's research, that you don't understand yet. Then help me understand. I needed answers. The anagram on the whiteboard, Cole's ethical concerns, Ben's increasingly evasive behavior, everything was connected, but I couldn't see how. Ben, I want to review more of Cole's files. His personal research, his correspondence, everything. Ben looked uncomfortable. I'm not sure that's advisable. I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you what I need to complete my investigation. Reluctantly, Ben led me to another workstation where Cole kept his personal research files. I started with recent documents, implementation notes, patient intake forms with redacted names, except for one margin notation: SB, 2 sons, ages 8 and 10. My throat tightened. S.B. Sarah Brady, one of the names from the incident reports. 2 sons, 8 and 10. I could see them. Not clearly, just impressions. Gap-toothed smiles in Little League uniforms. The older one had his arm around the younger one's shoulders. Grass stains on white pants. The photo had been on someone's desk, angled so you'd see it every time you looked up from your work. Dr. Thorne? Ben's voice sounded distant. I blinked. Where had that image come from? I'd never seen a photo of Sarah Brady's children. The incident reports hadn't included family pictures, but I could see the frame, silver, slightly tarnished, the way it caught the light from the workstation lamp. I'm fine. I scrolled past the notation, but my hand was shaking. Maybe we should take a break. I said I'm fine. But I wasn't, because I could still see that photo frame, could remember the exact placement on a desk I'd never seen. Ben, why would Cole have patient information about Sarah Brady? I told you, I can't discuss. She wasn't a patient. She was a colleague. She died in the Seattle breach. I turned to face him. Why does Cole have therapy notes about someone who died? Ben's silence was answer enough. I pulled up the personnel directory. Sarah Brady, smiling in a lab coat. Marcus DeLeon in a group photo, arms around colleagues. David Williams at a retirement party, background figure observing. These are all researchers, I said, from different facilities, different time periods. Dr. Thorne, wait. I cross-referenced dates. Sarah Brady worked at Helix Dynamics in Seattle, died 8 months ago in a containment breach. Marcus DeLeon, same facility, same incident. David Williams, same incident. I looked up at Ben. 3 people died in Seattle 8 months ago, and Cole has therapy files on all of them. How is that possible? Ben was backing toward the door. We should go. No. I stood up, blocking his path. You're going to explain this. These people are dead, but Cole has therapeutic assessments of them. Unless... The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a picture I didn't want to see. Unless the therapy wasn't for them, it was for whoever killed them. Ben stepped back, his face pale behind the visor. Dr. Thorne, please stop. I kept searching through the files, found psychiatric evaluations, trauma assessments, guilt processing protocols, all centered around a single incident, the Helix Dynamics containment breach. Someone was being treated for survivor's guilt, I said. Someone who was there when Sarah, Marcus, and David died. Someone who blamed themselves. Another document caught my attention. Patient presence with severe dissociative episodes following workplace incident resulting in 3 fatalities. Subject exhibits complete personality fragmentation, creating investigator persona to distance self from responsibility. Ben, who was the patient? Please, you need to stop reading. But I was already scrolling to the next section, treatment notes, session records, and there, in a clinical assessment dated 6 months ago, patient continues to reject core identity, Evan Cole, in favor of investigator persona, Dr. Eris Thorne. Immersive scenario therapy recommended. The screen held my attention. My name in a psychiatric file. This isn't real, I said quietly. Dr. Thorne, these files, they're fabricated, part of Cole's psychological manipulation. I was grasping for rational explanations. He created fake therapy records with my name to make me think I'm a patient. Classic gaslighting technique. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. The files were too detailed, too consistent, too clinical to be fabrications. Ben, who am I? Ben's hands were shaking. I can't continue this charade. Answer me. Who am I really? I think we should return to the lab, Ben said quietly. There's something I need to show you. We walked back to Cole's laboratory in silence. I was trying to process what I'd found, looking for alternative explanations that didn't involve me being a psychiatric patient. But the evidence was overwhelming. The lab felt different now. Less like a crime scene, more like a stage set. The equipment, the scattered papers, the whiteboard with my name, it all looked arranged, theatrical. What did you want to show me? I asked. Ben was staring at something in the corner of the lab, motionless behind his visor. Do you know where you are? Ben asked. I looked around the laboratory, trying to see it with fresh eyes. Site Chimera, research facility. Look at yourself, Ben said gently. Really look. The medication, I said, side effects from the injection. But even as I said it, I could see the doubt in Ben's expression. Then the lights cut out. Complete darkness. The electrical systems died, leaving absolute silence except for our breathing through the suit's filtration systems. But then I heard other breathing. Not mine, not Ben's. Someone else in the laboratory with us. Papers rustled. Footsteps moved across the floor, quiet but distinct. Someone was walking around in the darkness, rearranging things. "Ben?" I whispered. "I'm here. Right next to you." The movement continued, closer now. I could hear hands touching surfaces, items being moved around on the workbenches. Then the emergency backup power slammed on with a harsh buzz, flooding the lab with harsh white light. For a moment, the whiteboard looked different. The word Thorn seemed to blur, reforming into something else. Welcome home, before resolving back to Thorn with its arrow to Throne. I blinked. The medication was hitting harder. "Ben, did you see?" But when I looked again, the board was unchanged. Thorn. Just Thorn. "Ben, someone was in here with us." But before he could answer, Ben's composure finally cracked. He pulled off his hazmat hood, his hair damp with sweat, his face pale and exhausted. "I can't keep doing this," he whispered. "God help me, I can't continue putting you through this." I listened for the sounds I'd been expecting since arriving. Voices from other wings, movement, signs that this place housed the patients Ben kept mentioning. But there was nothing. Just the steady airflow systems and our own breathing. "Where are they?" I asked. "The other patients. Marcus from Wing B. The ones who couldn't be evacuated." Ben's expression was breaking down entirely. I can't maintain this facade anymore." Ben was fumbling with something from his pocket, a medical folder thick with documentation. His hands were trembling as he opened it. "Dr. Thorne, I need to show you something." The folder was labeled Patient File, Evan Cole, and the admission photo stapled to the inside cover was my face. I stared at the photo, trying to process what I was seeing. The face was mine, but older, gaunt, gray streaks at the temples that I didn't remember having, a thin surgical scar along the hairline. "This isn't possible." "Look at yourself," Ben said gently. "Really look." He guided me to a dark computer monitor, its black screen acting as a mirror. In the reflection, I saw the same face from the admission photo, older, worn, with that surgical scar clearly visible. And the hazmat suit, in the reflection it flickered, looking for a moment like hospital scrubs. "Do you know where you are?" Ben asked. I couldn't answer. The reflection was wrong, impossible, but undeniably real. Ben reached into the folder and pulled out more items. A nameplate, Dr. Evan Cole, an ID badge with my photo and Cole's name. Prescription bottles with Cole's name, but my birth date. "You're in Anchorage," Ben said quietly. "St. Elias Neuropsychiatric Institute. This wing is called Chimera Wing." I looked around the laboratory with new eyes. The protective suit suddenly felt like restraints. The red emergency lighting looked like the soft illumination used in psychiatric facilities. The sealed doors weren't containment, they were security. The facility, the research, Site Chimera, all part of your therapeutic scenario. You've been Dr. Thorne for 18 months now, investigating your own case. Ben gestured toward the distant sounds. "The other patients you hear, they're real. This is a functioning psychiatric facility. But this wing, the scenario, Cole's lab, that's all constructed for you. We built your investigation inside an actual hospital." Ben's shoulders sagged. "The injection I gave you? That's your daily medication. You take it every morning, but in your mind, it's always the first prophylactic injection of a new mission. Each day you wake up, the scenario resets, and you begin investigating again. The radio contact with Dr. Khatri? He's your doctor, but you hear him as a mission controller. What happened in Seattle? I asked, though part of me already knew. Ben opened the file to a section marked Incident Report. You were Dr. Evan Cole, biochemist at Helix Dynamics. You were developing neural enhancement compounds for DARPA, but something went wrong during a test protocol. He showed me photographs, a laboratory in ruins, body bags being wheeled out. 3 people died: Sarah Brady, Marcus DeLeon, David Williams, your colleagues, your friends. The exposure was your fault, a miscalculation in the compound formulation. I could see it now, memory fragments breaking through whatever barriers had been constructed in my mind. The look of trust on Sarah's face as she volunteered for the test, Marcus joking about overtime pay, David double-checking the safety protocols because he always worried. You had a complete psychological break after the incident, dissociative identity disorder. You created Dr. Thorne as a way to investigate your own crime without having to face the guilt of being Evan Cole. Ben looked away, his grip tightening on the tablet. You've been living this same investigation over and over for 18 months. Every few weeks, we start again. You arrive as Dr. Thorne, investigate Dr. Cole's disappearance, and eventually discover the truth. Then we have to reset everything and begin again. And you? I'm your nurse. Ben Reeves. I've been taking care of you since you arrived here. Every time we do this, I hope it will be the last time, that you'll integrate, accept what happened, and start healing. I stared at the evidence in Ben's hands, my face on Cole's ID badge, the prescription bottles, the medical files. This isn't... I started, but couldn't finish. Ben watched me with an expression I couldn't read, hope mixed with fear, like he'd seen this moment before and knew what came next. The memories were there, just beneath the surface. Sarah's face, not the photo from the directory, her real face, the way it looked in motion, animated, alive, the way her expression changed when she was concentrating on data. Marcus's laugh. I could hear it now, full-bodied, infectious, the kind that made you laugh even if you hadn't heard the joke. David's careful hands checking protocols, the clipboard he always carried, the way he'd tap the pen against it 3 times before signing anything. These weren't vague impressions. These were memories, real memories. I was Evan Cole. Wasn't I? I sank to the floor of the laboratory, my back against the wall. The suit felt impossibly heavy. I pulled off the hood and let it fall beside me, my head in my hands. The memories were coming back in fragments, not all at once, pieces like a jigsaw puzzle being assembled by someone with shaking hands. The real Seattle laboratory, not this sterile empty space, but a bright facility with fluorescent lighting. Sarah at her workstation, laughing at something Marcus had said. Her desk covered with papers and a photo of her 2 boys, 8 and 10 years old, gap-toothed grins in their Little League uniforms. The frame was angled so she'd see their faces every time she looked up. She'd adjusted it that morning. Sarah Brady, I whispered. The name felt like swallowing glass. Marcus DeLeon, joking about overtime pay as he prepped the containment chamber. Always joking. Always trying to lighten the mood when the work got too intense. He'd brought coffee for everyone that morning, showed up at 6 a.m. to brew it himself because the facility stuff tasted like floor cleaner, he'd said. French roast because David liked it strong. David Williams. Careful, methodical David, who double-checked every safety protocol because he was the one with a wife and newborn at home. His daughter was 3 weeks old. He'd shown everyone photos on his phone that morning. Tiny pink face, eyes squeezed shut, little fists clenched. She sleeps like she's ready to fight the world, he'd said, tired but smiling. He'd questioned my calculations twice that week, and both times I'd dismissed his concerns. The containment chamber, compound 57Z. My documented concerns about the containment protocols, filed with the safety committee 6 weeks before the test. Concerns that had been noted, reviewed, and ultimately ignored because the project timeline was too important to delay. The breach. I remembered standing outside the chamber, protected by reinforced glass, watching my colleagues prepare for what should have been a routine exposure test. The alarm started when I'd predicted it would, minutes into the protocol, exactly when the compound would reach critical saturation. The gas release. Sarah dropping first, her body convulsing as the neurochemical overload hit her system. Marcus clawing at the glass, his eyes wide with terror and confusion. David seizing, his careful hands twitching uselessly as his nervous system shut down. Sarah's husband, trying to reach the emergency lockdown. Williams stumbling toward the exit that wouldn't open fast enough. I had stood there, protected by the glass that held for me but failed for them, and watched 3 people die from exposure I had specifically warned was possible. "I killed them," I said, the words coming out broken and raw. I knew the protocols were insufficient, and I let it happen anyway. The investigation had ruled it accidental. "Equipment failure," they said. "Unforeseen interaction between the compound and the chamber's filtration system." But I had known. I had documented the risks. I had continued anyway because I wanted to publish, wanted the recognition, wanted my name on the breakthrough that would change neurochemistry forever. 8 months of suppressed grief, of waking up in cold sweats, of seeing their faces every time I closed my eyes. 8 months of pretending it wasn't my fault while knowing absolutely that it was. I felt Ben's hand on my shoulder, steady and warm. "You remember," he said quietly. "I remember everything." Ben sat down beside me on the laboratory floor, still in his protective suit, but with the hood pushed back. His face was exhausted, but hopeful. "The Throne Protocol," he said. "Your own theoretical design. You published the preliminary research 3 years ago, before Seattle. Immersive narrative therapy for severe psychological trauma. I remember writing it. We create an elaborate scenario, let you investigate, hope you find yourself. How many times?" Ben's expression grew sad. "This is the 4th time we've brought you this far." 4th? The number hit me like a physical blow. "The first time you lasted maybe 20 minutes before Thorne came back. The second time was worse. You remembered, but then became convinced the memories were implanted. The third time..." Ben's voice trailed off. "What happened the third time?" "You remembered for almost an hour. You cried. You talked about Sarah's boys, how they'd never understand why their mother wasn't coming home. You talked about Marcus's wife, about David's baby daughter. Then Thorne came back stronger than ever." I stared at the whiteboard where I had written my own name as an anagram. "So this, all of this, it's therapy." "Yes, we recontextualize the facility as a research site. Your nurse becomes a technician, your doctor becomes a mission controller, the other patients become threats or anomalies. Your medication becomes a prophylactic injection." "Does it ever work?" Ben was quiet for a long moment. "We don't know. You're the first patient, the only patient. You designed it for yourself, and you're testing it on yourself. We're all just following your protocol." I stood up slowly, unsteady on my feet. For the first time, I really looked at what I was wearing. Beneath the protective gear, I could see the fabric clearly now. Not an undersuit. Scrubs, plain hospital scrubs. I touched the material. I thought this was the undersuit. "It's just scrubs," Ben said. "Hospital issue. You've been wearing them for 8 months." I moved to the whiteboard, studying my own frantic handwriting. The chemical formulas were real research, but the behavioral matrices were therapy notes. The repeated phrases weren't scientific observations, they were psychological affirmations. And there, in the center, thorn pointing to throne. I was leaving myself clues, I said. Part of me knew. You designed the protocol with built-in revelations, breadcrumbs for yourself to follow back to the truth. I traced the letters with my finger. Clever. Use the investigator's instinct against itself. Make me want to solve the mystery. Did I want to get better? When I designed this? Ben chose his words carefully. I think you wanted to believe you could, but I also think part of you knew you'd never want to come back. Being Evan Cole was too painful. It is too painful, being me, knowing what I did. Ben stepped closer, urgent. But you're here now. You're present. You remember. You're you. Can you stay? The weight of it, Sarah's boys, Marcus's jokes, David's careful hands, pressed down on me like a physical force. But underneath the pain was relief, the exhaustion of running from yourself for 8 months. I can try, I said. I want to try. Ben's relief was visible. Just stay with me. We'll get through this. For a moment, the future seemed possible. Accepting responsibility, making amends to the families, learning to live with what I had done instead of running from it. Okay, I said. What happens now? But as I spoke those words, something changed. The tremor in my hands stopped. The confusion cleared. My posture straightened. Not in a healthy way, in a crystallizing way. Sharpening. The whiteboard demanded another look, but now I was seeing it differently. This is very sophisticated, I said, my voice changing. The attention to detail, the psychological manipulation. Evan? Ben's voice carried a note of growing alarm. What are you? I turned to face him, and I could see in his eyes the exact moment he realized Cole was gone. That was very clever, I said, but it wasn't Cole's voice anymore. It was mine. Dr. Thorne's voice, professional, analytical, clear. Ben stepped back. No, Evan, please. You were doing so well. You were right there. I studied his distressed expression with clinical interest. Textbook Compound 57Z symptom progression, identity dissociation, false memory implantation. You're experiencing a full delusional break. It is a hospital. Ben stepped closer, his hands shaking. You're not Thorne. Thorne isn't real. I gave him a sad smile. You poor bastard. The exposure really got you. The pieces were falling into place now, clear and logical. Cole knew I was coming. He had time to prepare this. Fake medical records with my photo, fabricated therapy protocols with my name embedded as anagrams, classic psychological warfare. Ben moved to block the laboratory door. That's not what's happening. You're running from the truth. Cole is still in the facility somewhere, I continued, the logic building perfectly. Hiding. He created this elaborate scenario to make me believe I'm him. If I believe I'm the patient, I stop investigating. He escapes. There is no breach. Ben's hands trembled as he reached for me. There is no Cole to find. You are Cole. I moved toward the door, my mission clear. I need to secure the site, get you into quarantine, call in medical support for compromised personnel. Ben grabbed my arm. Evan, please. You remembered. You said their names. You talked about Sarah's kids. That was real. I gently removed his hand from my arm. The contact felt wrong. That's the compound, creates false memories, makes you believe you lived someone else's life. I know it feels real to you, but it's not. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Ben was clearly suffering. I know this isn't your fault. The exposure affects everyone differently, but I have a job to do. I moved through the corridor with purpose, my earlier disorientation completely gone. The disconnected feeling from the prophylactic injection had vanished. I felt sharp, clear. Ben followed behind me. "Evan, don't do this. If you call security, they'll sedate you." "I'm calling for medical support for you," I corrected, "and any other compromised personnel." I reached the communications terminal and picked up the receiver. Ben made one last desperate attempt. "If you do this, we're back to 0. Months of work, gone. You'll be trapped as Thorn forever." I regarded him with genuine sympathy. The delusion was so complete, so convincing. Cole had done excellent work in such a short time. "My name is Dr. Aris Thorn," I said, dialing the emergency number, "and I'm ending this." I moved to the facility intercom system with purpose. My voice would echo through the wing, clear and authoritative. "This is Dr. Aris Thorn, CDC. I need security and medical personnel to Chimera Wing, Laboratory 7. I have compromised personnel, Technician Ben Reeves experiencing severe dissociative symptoms. Patient is delusional, believes he's medical staff. Potential exposure to compound 57Z, need immediate psychiatric intervention." Behind me, Ben slumped against the wall. "Oh God, Evan, what have you done?" The alarm began. Not an emergency alarm, but a soft, repetitive tone. Psychiatric alert, staff responding, measured, controlled, exactly what the situation required. The laboratory door held my attention, confidence filling me. I had secured the situation, found the compromised personnel. Soon, they would locate Cole. The mission would be complete. From somewhere in the other wing, the sounds intensified. The alarm had disturbed the patients. More screaming, more banging, someone shouting, "Let me out, let me out, let me out," in an endless, desperate loop. I flinched. Are they secured? The contaminated patients? Ben turned away, staring at the wall. They're not contaminated. They're just sick and scared. And you just set off an alarm that terrifies them. Footsteps approached in the corridor. Multiple people running. I straightened my shoulders, ready to brief them, ready to report. This is what I did. This is who I was. The door opened. 4 orderlies entered, followed by Dr. Khatri. What I saw, CDC response team in tactical medical gear. Dr. Khatri in hazmat suit, ready to assess the contamination. What was actually there? Hospital orderlies in scrubs. Dr. Khatri in a white coat, stethoscope around her neck, looking exhausted. I delivered my report quickly. Dr. Khatri. Subject Benjamin Reeves has experienced catastrophic exposure to compound 57Z, full dissociative break. He believes he's my assigned nurse, believes this facility is a psychiatric hospital, believes I'm the patient. He's been attempting to prevent me from completing my investigation. I recommend immediate sedation and isolation. Dr. Khatri's face showed pain, disappointment. She looked at Ben. Ben shook his head, tears streaming down his face. We were so close. He remembered. He said their names. He was Evan for maybe 10 minutes. Then Thorn came back stronger. Khatri spoke to the orderlies. Prepare sedation. Full protocol. We're done here. I felt a flutter of confusion. Sedate who? Reeves, yes, that's what I... They moved toward me. I backed away. Wait. What are you doing? I'm the investigator. I'm Dr. Thorn. I'm CDC. You're making a mistake. Khatri's voice was gentle but firm. Evan, I need you to listen to me. I'm not Evan. I'm Thorn. I'm Dr. Aris Thorn. I was sent here to investigate. I found compromised personnel. I'm trying to help. The orderlies moved with practiced efficiency, like they had done this before, multiple times. "I know you believe that," Khatri said. "I know it feels real. But you're not Thorn. Thorn isn't real. You're Evan Cole. You're my patient. And you're having an episode. No. You're all compromised. All of you. The exposure." They reached me. I tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. The laboratory was small. They were between me and the door. "Please, listen to me. I'm trying to help. I'm trying to find Cole. I'm trying to stop the breach. This is important. This is everything." The orderlies were gentle but firm, hands on my arms, professional holds, not violent, just controlling. I struggled, not aggressively, just trying to pull away. "Let me go. I have a mission. I have to complete my mission. People are counting on me." Khatri nodded to one of the orderlies. The injection was quick. Into my shoulder, through the scrubs I still believed were part of a hazmat suit. The effect was immediate. My legs weakened, vision blurring. Ben approached. "I'm sorry, Evan. I'm so sorry. We almost had you back." I regarded him with pity, with genuine compassion. "You're sick. You're so sick. The compound made you believe you're my caretaker. But it's not your fault. None of this is your fault." Ben's response was broken. "You are him. You've always been him. And I failed you. Again." My consciousness was fading, but my conviction remained, right until the end. "My name is Dr. Eris Thorn." The world went dark. My final thoughts as the sedation took me. I did it. I completed the mission. I identified the compromised personnel, Ben, the security team, even Dr. Khatri. The exposure got all of them, made them believe the facility was a hospital, made them believe I was a patient. Elaborate group delusion. Tragic. But I saw through it. I stayed focused, trusted my training. They would get help now, medical intervention, treatment. They would recover. They would understand eventually that I was trying to save them. Cole was still somewhere in the facility, but now that security knew there was a containment breach, they would find him. They would extract him. They would piece together what happened. The truth would come out. Cole knew the protocols were insufficient. Cole caused the breach. Cole hid while people died. And Dr. Eris Thorn, CDC field epidemiologist, did his job. I assessed the situation. I documented the evidence. I secured the compromised personnel. I called for backup. Professional, capable, effective. Everything Evan Cole wasn't. The guilt I felt earlier, that strange moment when I thought I was Cole, that was the exposure, the compound trying to break my mind. But I resisted. I held on to who I was. As darkness took me completely, I felt satisfaction. Deep, pure satisfaction. The kind you only get when you've done something truly important. When you've made a difference. When you've saved lives, even if they don't understand yet. I smiled. A small, genuine smile. The smile of a man who had no idea he just sentenced himself to hell for the 5th time. Cole was wheeled away, slumped in a wheelchair, head lolling. Peaceful, still smiling slightly. Ben followed him with his eyes, face wet. Another orderly placed a hand on his shoulder. "You need a break, Ben. 8 months is too long." Dr. Khatri approached, removing her glasses. She looked exhausted. "Are we going to try again?" Ben asked. Khatri's pause was heavy with failure. "I don't know. We thought this would be the breakthrough. The persona is adapting, learning. It's getting harder to reach him." "I'll discuss long-term care options with the board," Khatri said finally. "Somewhere the delusion can exist without crisis." "You're giving up on him." I'm accepting his choice. Evan Cole doesn't want to be Evan Cole anymore. Every time we bring him back, he chooses Thorn again. Ben looked down the hallway where Cole had disappeared. So we just let him live in the delusion forever? What else can we do? Force him to remember? Make him live with that guilt every day? That might be crueler than this. Ben nodded numbly. Khatri walked away. Ben stood alone in the hallway, surrounded by the sounds of other patients, all that suffering, all those people trapped. He stayed there for a long time. Cole's room was small, clean, institutional. A window with reinforced glass showed the Anchorage skyline. An orderly settled him into bed, removing the scrubs he wore as an undersuit, hospital gown underneath. They covered him with a blanket and checked the restraints, soft, just precautionary. As they turned to leave, Cole's eyes fluttered open briefly. The sedative was still heavy in his system. He saw his reflection in the dark window, his real face, gaunt, broken, older. For just a split second, recognition, horror, understanding, the truth. Then his eyes shifted focus, and in the reflection superimposed over his real face, he saw what he needed to see. Dr. Eris Thorn, strong jaw, clear eyes, confident, capable, the hero. Cole's lips moved, barely audible. Mission accomplished. Epilogue. Ben stood alone in the corridor, hands still shaking. Another orderly approached. "You okay?" "Fourth time," Ben said quietly. "4 times we've brought him to the edge." The orderly's expression shifted. Uncomfortable. "Ben, how long have you been Cole's primary nurse?" 8 months since he arrived." The orderly hesitated, then pulled out a tablet, scrolled through files. His face went pale. "Ben, according to this, you've been assigned to Cole for 3 years. That's impossible. I remember his intake, 8 months ago, the helicopter landing." The orderly turned the tablet around. Ben stared at the screen. Pages and pages of session notes, his own handwriting, dates going back 3 years. I don't understand." The orderly pulled up another file. Session log, patient EC. Nurse Benjamin Reeves reports, 4th cycle complete. Patient achieved temporary integration before relapse. Dated 18 months ago. Another log. Same words. 2 years ago. Another. Same words. 30 months ago. All in Ben's handwriting. All saying, "This is the 4th time." "How many times?" Ben whispered. The orderly kept scrolling. 63 documented cycles. The corridor tilted. "Ben." The orderly's voice was gentle. "You're not staff. You're a patient. You were at Seattle too, a technician. You watched them die through the glass, couldn't open the doors, couldn't save them." Ben's legs gave out. He slid down the wall. "The throne protocol isn't just Cole's therapy," the orderly continued. "You're both in treatment. He can't remember being Cole. You can't remember how many times you've tried to save him. Every time he resets, you reset too. You always think it's the 4th time. You always think you're getting close." Ben stared at his hands. Nurse's hands. Technician's hands. He couldn't tell anymore. "I was there," he said slowly. "I watched them die. Sarah, Marcus, David. I couldn't open the emergency locks fast enough. Yes. So I keep trying to save Cole because I couldn't save them. Yes. But I never do. I just fail again. Over and over." The orderly nodded. How long until I forget this conversation? Usually a few days. You'll wake up and it'll be Cole's first day here. You'll be his nurse. You'll help him investigate. You'll think it's the fourth time. Ben looked down the corridor toward Cole's room. Does he know? About me? Ben could already feel it, the edges of this conversation blurring, the certainty fading like a dream. Will I remember any of this? No. Good, Ben whispered. I don't think I could do it again if I remembered. But he would do it again. In 3 days, he would wake up. He would meet Dr. Evan Cole for the first time. He would help him investigate. He would bring him so close to the truth. It would be the fourth time. It would always be the fourth time. That night, 2 patients dreamed. One dreamed of red-lit corridors and a mission. In his dream, his name was Dr. Aris Thorne, and he was getting close to the truth. The other dreamed of a helicopter landing, of a man who needed saving. In his dream, his name was Ben Reeves, and he was a nurse, and this time, he would get it right. The helicopter was waiting. Appreciate you tuning in for the chills. Hope this helped you unwind. Share your story ideas in the comments and subscribe to become part of our nocturnal crew. Until next time, take care.